I'm a music fan ever since I was a kid, and I grew up in New York City and camped out for days for tickets on the streets of New York. 3 nights in a row for the Stones. Like I'll buy tickets for that in the '60s. And I went to Woodstock and I saw the Velvet Underground and Jimi Hendrix and the Doors and Janis Joplin and on and on and on. But things changed. I moved to Northern California and I had a remarkable relationship with a gentleman who also was a music fan. And we joined up and decided that we were going to find out what was going to happen in this world with music. And you couldn't find out what bands sounded like. And we subscribed to every newspaper and magazine we could. And we used to examine them so carefully and would read who's playing where and knew all the things. And we weren't even in New York or anywhere else at the time. And I used to call up clubs in New York to hear bands that none of these bands had records, so you couldn't go and buy them. I became friends with the woman who ran the door at CBGB's and answered the phone. And she would hold the receiver out so I could at least hear 2 songs of television so that I could hear what they sounded like, because, I saw what they looked like and it was like, wow, I need to know what they sounded like. And at that time, there was, this is 76, 77, and the Ramones and Patti Smith came out to California, and we followed them around. And we would sleep in the car outside the venue, and we would see them night after night after night after night. And we followed them up and down the coast, and their first tours. And, we saw the Ramones for, every single night. And in those days, they had multiple shows. Like the Whiskey had an early show and a late show. And they had opening bands. And I remember the first Ramones was Blondie was the opening act. 3 nights, we saw 6 shows, stood in front of Dee Dee for 6 nights, and then went and did it in San Francisco and in San Jose. And, and in those days, bands didn't have merch. So if you wanted to be part of that thing that was happening, I would silk screen my own T-shirts. And so that I could wear the Patti Smith shirt or the Ramones shirt to the concert and be the only one there with it. In those days, you didn't go to Hot Topic and buy the outfit off a rack. You made your own clothes. You put together the look because you learned it all from the album cover. When you learned everything, you knew what drugs to take, what shoes to wear, how to wear your hair, everything. The most important information, you all got all that from the record cover. It's it's so lacking today. Music was really exciting, and today, I'm sorry, it's not. But so anyway, there was all of this stuff happening, and we wanted to be part of it. And so we saved up our money, and Henry and I decided we were going to go to London because we were music fans and we were record collectors. We were vinyl junkies, and we decided we were going to go live there for a while and see everybody and see all these bands that we had no idea what they sounded like or anything, but we had seen little pictures. There was a magazine called Rock Scene that I was really hooked on because they had these little black and white photographs of all the bands in England and in New York and in LA, and you didn't know what they sounded like, but it was exciting. And so we went to London and we rented a room in a rooming house in Earl's Court, and we went out every day to buy records. And we went, the first day we got off the plane, we went to King's Road because we heard that was the place to be and to buy clothes. And we went into a record store and we started going through the racks, and we saw all these records we had always wanted but couldn't get here. And we started making a stack of records like this. And the guy behind the counter goes like, "Are you going to buy those?" And we're like, "Yeah, we are. Do you have a cardboard box that we could fill up?" And he's like, "Yeah." And we filled up boxes of records, and we were going to take them home. And he's like, "What are you doing here?" And we're like, "We want to see music." And he's like, "Well, I go out. I have a car, and I go see bands every night, and I can take you." And his name was Peter Kent, and the store was Beggar's Banquet, and it was on Kings Road, and he became our mentor. And he's like, "You can do this, like back in LA." And we're like, "Really?" And so he planted the seed in our heads, and he took us out every night of the week. And in those days, we saw bands every single day, and sometimes 2 shows a night, and we saw everybody, like the Clash, X-Ray Specs, the Slits, Adam and the Ants, Susie and the Banshees, the Damned, Nico, the Adverts. Every night we saw shows, and it was super exciting. And Peter knew a lot of these bands, and he introduced us. And so we had a foot in the door, sort of, with some of these people because he knew them. And he later became the manager of a band called Bauhaus. And so he introduced us to them, and we went and saw shows with him every night. And then we came back to Los Angeles, and Henry started cutting hair, and I started painting billboards on Sunset. Because in those days, on front of Tower Records, those were hand-painted oil paintings. I used to paint those. Like a giant Rod Stewart with his legs spread over the entrance to Tower Records. I painted that. And I got paid really well to do that because I can paint with a big brush like this wide. And I saved all the money, and Henry cut hair, and he saved up all his money, and we rented a space to open a record store. And we thought about it, what would be the name, and we talked about it, and we wanted something that was like edgy. And so I came up one day and I said, "How about Vinyl Fetish?" And that's where it came from. And we opened in 1980, and we had connections to some of these bands already. But when these bands came to America for the first time, mostly English bands and local bands too, like we would host them, and we would pick them up at the airport, take them to the Tropicana where they mostly stayed, and then see all the shows, and then we would do record signings. And I have Polaroids of every one, and I went through them this afternoon, and I made a list, and I left it at home because I forgot it. But, we had the first appearance in America of a lot of these bands, and I mean, we had U2, and there maybe 30 people showed up. I mean, people didn't know who they were yet. They only had a 45 out, and that was it, But our first record signing was X, and that was their first record. And we did a lot of local bands, Wall of Voodoo, Christian Death, 45 Grave. When they had their records out, we would host the party. And people like The Damned, the store was on Melrose, and in those days, in the 80s, Melrose was like way happening. Like it was the place to be. And when we would have these parties, we would shut the street down. I mean, there was so many people that would fill from one side of the street to the other, you couldn't drive down the street. There was like thousands of kids that wanted their record signed. The Damned, we had more people than anybody. Iggy Pop, he came in and he had an autobiography called I Need More, and we were the only people to have him come and sign the book. And he wanted watercolor paints, and my daughter brought in her watercolors, and we thought that he was gonna. He took the paint and smeared it all over his body. We thought he was going to paint something, but he didn't. But he signed the books. But I need to say, before that, when I lived in Northern California, Henry and I ran the Iggy Pop fan club. And we had a button machine and a silk screener. And I did all the T-shirts and made the buttons. And to make them really punk rock, I had my 7-year-old daughter with a marker pen, scribble on them, and then we'd make the buttons. Yeah, so we had everybody in the store. You can name every 80s band for the first time, like Culture Club, Duran Duran. I mean, Duran Duran, the girls went crazy. It was their first appearance. They played the Roxy 2 nights. And for years afterwards, people would come in and stare at the floor, and I'd be like, "Can I help you?" And they'd be like, "That's where Duran Duran stood." For real, that really happened. And Depeche Mode, and you know. So this became a thing, and then all the people that worked at record companies that were supposed to find their own music would come in and ask us to hand them like the best records that came out that week. And then K-Rock came to us and said, "Hey, can you do a radio show once a week, and you can play the best singles in England on the radio for the first time?" And we did. We played all of those bands the first time in America. You know, we had to convince K-Rock of this. It was like the Culture Club single, and we're like, "Here, play this," like, and put it in rotation. They were like, "Why?" And I go like, "Look at this cover. Do you see what this person looks like? This is amazing. Like, this is like radical, revolutionary. You need to play this." And they were like, "Oh, okay." Bauhaus, first time in America on the radio, we played it. All of this kind of stuff. It was really fun stuff. It was exciting. And then, you know, we helped a lot of local bands. And in those days, in front of our store, kids would panhandle on Melrose. And there were these 3 kids that would panhandle, and they would come in. And then Henry and I started DJing, and we had nightclubs. And people would go to hear us play records in nightclubs that we were selling. And, well, there were these 3 boys that hung out, and they were like, penniless, and they were like, "Oh, can we come to your clubs for free?" And I was like, we became friends with them. They became Guns N' Roses, and then they made a cassette, and I played "Welcome to the Jungle" on K-Rock 2 years before Geffen even knew who they were. It's just, you know, it was like this and we didn't sell what we didn't like. Okay, we had a really bad reputation about a lot of people didn't like us, because if we didn't like it, we didn't sell it and we didn't play it. And it was personal taste, you know, and politics, but some things we were like, we're not selling that, we're not playing that. And bands would be like, "Why not?" And we were like, "Because it's crap, you know, it's like, this is just shit, you know, I will never play this, I'll never sell it," you know, and they'd be like horrified. And then people were afraid to come in the store sometimes too, because I would be like, "Are you gonna buy something? If not, get out," you know, like, I have a friend today who's probably my best friend. Her name is Rose, and she tells me that she lived in Orange County, and on weekends Melrose was really happening, and she would convince her mother to take all her friends and deposit them on Melrose for the afternoon. And she says they used to stand in front of our store and dare each other who was going to go in and ask me at the counter for the record they wanted, because they were afraid of me. They were afraid to ask because they knew that my reaction was like, "We don't carry that shit in here. Go to Woolworths," you know, like. So I'm told I should wrap it up, but it became this wonderful thing for me. But music's been my passion, always has been, you know, and I'm always wanting to hear something new. And there's lots of new bands out there that I like, and I'm always listening and discovering new stuff. So thanks.